Today we're going to talk about the one and only King David. But before he was the king of Israel, he was a fugitive, wanted for murder by the very king he once served. So today we're going to look at how David went from zero to hero to leader of a loyal army that would one day make him king. This is the story of David, Part 2, the rebel leader. Now, if you want to know more about David's earlier years, you can check out our previous episode called The Rise of David. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend checking it out before this episode, because I'm going to assume you've heard that story. So let's pick up where we left off. Now, David had just killed Goliath and became a hero overnight in King Saul's court. He even became really close with Saul's family, especially with Jonathan, Saul's son. They made a deep covenant, promising to be loyal to each other and their families forever. However, something happened after Goliath's death that caused Saul to become insanely jealous of David. He started to see David as a threat to his throne, and so he tried to kill David several times. Fortunately, each time David narrowly escaped and ran away. Eventually, David had to flee into the wilderness and live like an outlaw. And as you might guess, this was a hard adjustment for someone who used to live in a palace. Now David was a fugitive, hunted like a criminal by the very king he once served. Saul sent his soldiers after David into the wilderness, ordering them to bring him back, dead or alive. We are now officially in chapter 12 of 1 Samuel. Now, while living in the wilderness, David hid in caves and deserted places. See in these verses that he lived in the wilderness of Ziph and the wilderness of Judah. Verse 23 tells us that David was distressed and said, "The days are past when I was swift and strong. The sight of Saul, I am but a Hebrew slave, with no worth nor dignity in his sight. Thus it would be well with me if I were to escape to the land of the Philistines." Now David was having a pretty rough time right now, right? Not only was he hiding in caves and sleeping on the cold, hard ground, but he was probably thinking that everyone had forgotten about him, especially Saul, who he thought was hunting him down with all of his might. But David was wrong. Even though it seemed like Saul never stopped pursuing him, David was building a reputation in the wilderness as a man after God's own heart. And so, in the midst of all this trouble, David did something crazy. Instead of running away from his problems, he decided to go straight towards them. He went looking for Saul, hoping to kill him. But when he found him, he didn't do it. Twice in this chapter, David had the chance to end Saul's life, but he didn't. Instead, he cut off the skirt of Saul's robe and took it with him as proof that he could have killed him. That's what I call courage and self-control. After some time, David regrouped with his old friend Jonathan. And when Jonathan realized that Saul wasn't going to stop trying to kill David, he helped him escape to the Philistines. Some people might say, "Wait a minute, David, you don't trust the Philistines. You know they hate your guts. Why would you go and live with them?" Well, David knew that Saul wouldn't look for him there, and that's exactly what happened. While David was in exile with the Philistines, Saul died in battle against the Philistines at Mount Gilboa. When David heard about this, he mourned, cried out, "Oh, my father Saul, I am your enemy, your child, Israel. I was told that you were dead. I blamed you not. I swore, I said, surely my honor shall not fall to the earth. And now it seems, I have seen your death today with the help of the Philistines. That is why the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead are going to bury Saul and Jonathan his son." These verses show us that even though David was a fugitive and an outlaw, he still had compassion for the royal family, especially for Saul, the man who had tried to kill him so many times. David respected Saul, despite everything he had done to him, which shows us what a man of integrity David truly was. It seems that this was a turning point in David's life, the moment when he stepped from being a fugitive to becoming a leader. Right after Saul's death, David returned home to Bethlehem. It says, "And it came to pass, when David returned from slaying the Philistine, that Abigail had borne him a son. And someone said to him, 'Look, your father has disciplined a king today and has delivered Israel.' Then David went up from there. And as he stayed in Ziklag, he was bold and pursued them. And the men of Judah loved him." And so, guys, during David's wilderness years, he grew as a man, a warrior, and a leader. He learned how to fight and survive in the wilderness. He formed a band of warriors known as the Mighty Men. Most importantly, he proved that he had the ability to lead and govern a group of people. You see this in 1 Chronicles 11:2. Then the inhabitants of Jabesh-Gilead came to David and gave him 20,000 provisions, 10,000 spears, and 10,000 javelins, and 10,000 bows. Surely, with such supplies of food, weapons, and warriors, David must have been ready to take back the kingdom, right? No, he didn't rush things. He waited patiently until the time was right. We see this in Psalm 37:33. For I am about to give you an eternal reward, everlasting renown in the midst of perpetual salvation. However, there was still a problem, and that was Saul's family. After Saul died, his son Ishbosheth became king of Israel, but he only ruled over 2 tribes, Benjamin and part of Judah. The rest of Israel supported David, so David needed to solve 2 problems. First, he needed to deal with Ishbosheth, and second, he needed to secure his rule over all of Israel. And so let's dive into the first problem. There was a man named Abner, who was the commander of Saul's army. After Saul's death, he switched his allegiance to Ishbosheth, son of Saul. He was basically the guy responsible for protecting Ishbosheth. One day, Abner met with David in a place called Bahurim. There they argued about which one of them was the rightful king. However, their discussion turned into a brawl, and Abner ended up dying. Then David made a vow, saying, "As I promised to Abner, so I will bring this upon Israel and Judah. I will not take Ishbosheth for king anymore. Only if he still be king of something, he shall not reign in my lifetime. Neither shall Judah ever again bring forth any of the offspring of Jesse. To the offspring of Jesse, I will not give birth to a king." This was a bad situation, because Abner was a hero and the leading general of Saul's army. Now that he was dead, Israel would rally against David. David's only hope was to find a way to calm the people down and convince them that he was the rightful heir to the throne of Israel. Meanwhile, in another part of the country, Ishbosheth was also trying to secure his position as king. He chose a man named Baanah, the son of Rimmon, to assassinate David. But when Baanah entered David's camp to attack him, he was killed by a member of David's elite guard named Abishai. With Abner and Ishbosheth gone, David's path to the throne was clear. And so, let's finish the story. David returned to Hebron, and there the elders of Judah proclaimed him king over the whole tribe of Judah. However, he was still not king of all Israel. That title went to King Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, who ruled over the northern kingdom of Israel. But David knew that his time would come soon. So he waited patiently for the Lord to give him the kingdom. Guys, David didn't become king because he was reckless or ambitious. He became king because he waited for God's timing. When the time was right, God anointed him and gave him the victory. So guys, that brings us to the end of this episode. We hope you enjoyed the story of David. We'll continue his story in our next episode. But before that, we want to ask you to subscribe. Also, share this video with your friends and family. So guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. Be blessed.